Oliver got laughed at in a staff meeting because he had flagged a book as unsafe to scan. His supervisor held it up like a prop and said it was just paper, not a bomb. 10 minutes later, the same supervisor sent an email blaming Oliver for the digitization backlog. Oliver walked back to the scanning room with his face hot, trying to look normal, and that was when the envelope slid out of the book and landed on the floor by his shoe. It was not old parchment or anything dramatic. It was a plain brown envelope, modern, taped shut, and it had a sticky note on it that said, "For the one who actually checks." The book had arrived in a donation batch to a Philadelphia University library, the kind that shows up after someone cleans out an apartment and drops boxes at the loading dock. Oliver logged each item, ran quick condition checks, and fed them into the digitization queue. This one was a technical paperback from the late 2010s with coffee rings and a bent spine. Cheap, forgettable, exactly the kind of thing people abandon. He had already scanned 40 pages when he felt the binding bump like something stiff was lodged inside. He opened it wider, and the envelope slipped free from a cutout in the backboard. Inside was a second smaller envelope and a folded sheet of printer paper. The sheet was titled Deployment Notes, and it listed dates, a contract address, and a few lines about a token supply and a vesting schedule. The smaller envelope held a handwritten recovery phrase and a password hint that looked like a joke until it did not. Oliver sat down, put on gloves like he was handling a photograph, and took pictures for the chain of custody log. Then he did the one thing he told interns never to do. He checked the contract address on a public block explorer from a library workstation. The number on the screen made his stomach drop, not because it was millions in cash, but because it was real and it was active. The contract still held tokens. Not a dusty relic, not a dead project. Something with recent transactions and a balance that could fund years of work if it was legitimate. Oliver took a slow breath, closed the browser, and carried the envelopes to the security office like he was carrying a broken beaker. The guard looked at the paper, shrugged, and said, "What is this, a coupon?" Oliver said, "It might be property." The guard wrote it down wrong twice, then called campus IT anyway, and within an hour Oliver was sitting in a small room with a compliance officer who kept tapping the envelope with a pen like it was going to answer. The first obstacle was not a villain. It was paperwork and fear. The library had policies for found cash, found jewelry, even found firearms in old estates, but nothing for cryptographic keys hidden in a book. Campus counsel told Oliver the same thing 3 times, slower each time, as if volume would make it clearer. Do not move anything. Do not test anything. Document everything. Oliver wanted to argue that even looking at the blockchain was not moving anything, but he kept quiet because he had already stepped on one rake. Then the second obstacle walked in wearing a blazer and a too bright smile. The donation batch had come through an estate cleanout company in South Philly. Their manager showed up at the library claiming the book box had been misdelivered and the contents belonged to a client. She asked to see the inventory list, then casually asked if any items had unusual inserts. Oliver watched his director get flustered, watched the manager's eyes track toward the scanning room, and felt the situation tilting. The manager said, "If you found something valuable, we can make this easy." Oliver said, "We logged everything. We will follow policy." She laughed like he had told a cute joke. The third obstacle was quieter and worse. Someone emailed Oliver from a brand new address with a subject line that included the contract address. The message was short. "I know what you found. If you touch it, you will regret it." Oliver forwarded it to campus police, and the officer who called back sounded tired until Oliver read the subject line. Then the officer got very alert and asked Oliver to stop using his work email for anything related to it. By the end of the week, the envelopes were locked in a property safe in the campus police station. Oliver hated that because it meant the evidence was safe but also out of his sight. He kept thinking about that sticky note, "For the one who actually checks," like it had been aimed at him specifically. On Friday afternoon, campus council scheduled a meeting with an outside digital asset attorney and told Oliver to bring every photo, every scan log, and the exact moment he had opened the book. Oliver showed up with a binder and a headache, and the attorney's first question was simple. "Has anyone tried to move the tokens yet?" Oliver said no, and the attorney said, "Good, because the chain says someone is trying." They brought Oliver back to the scanning room with 2 witnesses, an evidence tech from campus police, and a conservator who treated paper like it had feelings. The idea was to find out if the book held anything else and to document it cleanly. The conservator slid a thin metal spatula under the backboard and lifted it slowly. The adhesive gave off a dry crackle. Oliver could smell old glue and stale coffee. Under the board was a rectangular cavity cut with care, not jagged, and at the bottom was a second folded paper sealed in a plastic sleeve. It was heavier than it looked, like the printer paper had been laminated or doubled. The evidence tech weighed it on a small scale and photographed both sides. The conservator pointed at the inner edge of the cavity and said someone had reinforced the cut with cloth tape, which meant they planned for it to be opened and closed more than once. Oliver felt a cold little thrill, then forced it down. Thrill was how people got sloppy. The new paper was a timeline. It described a token launch, then a legal problem, then a move to shut down public operations. There was a line that mattered more than the rest. If keys are found, do not transfer to personal custody. There was also a contact name, a law firm, and a note that a vesting release was scheduled to occur soon by automated contract rules. Oliver did not need to understand every detail to see the risk. If the release was real, a large chunk could become movable on a specific date, and anyone with the keys could take it. Mini climax number 1 hit right there. The attorney on speakerphone said, "If the unlock happens and a bad actor has the phrase, they can drain it in minutes." Mini climax number 2 came when campus police confirmed the threatening email was not alone. 2 more messages had been sent to the general library inbox, fishing for details. Mini climax number 3 was the worst because it was pure coincidence. The estate cleanout manager called again and said her client was coming in person that afternoon. Oliver looked at the book on the table, its guts exposed, and realized they were running out of time to do this calmly. The attorney said, "We need a court-backed plan before that unlock date." Oliver stared at the timeline and saw the date. It was next Tuesday. The plan was boring on purpose. No secret moves, no late-night laptop heroics. They opened a case file with the Philadelphia Police Department Property Unit because the asset was found property with unknown ownership. They also filed a notice with the Pennsylvania Treasury Unclaimed Property Office because counsel wanted a paper trail that screamed good faith. The attorney arranged a secure session with a cryptoforensics firm based in New York that had handled court matters before. On Monday, Oliver took the train to 30th Street Station with a campus officer and a sealed evidence pouch that never left the officer's hand. At the forensics office, they sat in a conference room with a camera in the corner and a printed agenda. The lead analyst, Serena Park, explained what they could do without giving Oliver a tutorial. They would verify the recovery phrase in an offline environment, confirm it controlled the wallet tied to the deployment notes, and then prepare a court-supervised transfer to an escrow wallet controlled by a neutral party. Oliver liked the word neutral more than he liked any number on a screen. The first mini-climax came when the offline verification worked. Serena did not smile. She just nodded once and said, "It matches." The second mini-climax came when she pulled up the smart contract and pointed to a function that would release a tranche at a specific block time, which lined up with Tuesday morning. The third mini-climax came when the attorney received a call mid-meeting. A lawyer representing a dissolved Delaware corporation had filed an emergency motion claiming the wallet was corporate property and accusing the university of conversion. Oliver felt his throat tighten. He had not moved a cent and still he was being treated like a thief. They left New York with a draft court order, a scheduled hearing, and instructions to keep the keys sealed until a judge signed off. Back in Philadelphia, campus police placed an officer outside the library loading dock because the cleanout manager had been seen in the building lobby asking for Oliver by name. Oliver went home, ate leftover rice standing up, and stared at his phone until he fell asleep. At 2 a.m., he woke to another email. This one had a PDF attached titled Settlement Offer. The sender claimed to represent the rightful owner and promised a generous cut if Oliver handed over the phrase before Tuesday. Oliver forwarded it to counsel and watched the clock crawl toward morning. Court was in a plain room with scuffed floors and a judge who looked like he had seen every kind of nonsense humans could invent. The attorney laid out the facts. Found inside a donated book. Documented chain of custody. No transfers. Active threat indicators. Automated release approaching. Serena testified remotely and explained escrow in simple terms. The opposing lawyer pushed hard, saying the notes proved corporate ownership and that the book must have been stolen from an office during a chaotic shutdown. The judge asked the only question that mattered. Where is the evidence of theft? The opposing lawyer had suspicions and a story, not a report number, not a witness, not a police record. Mini climax 1 was the judge granting a narrow order. The assets could be moved only into court-controlled escrow to prevent loss, with public notice to potential claimants and a deadline for proof of ownership. Mini climax 2 was the clean-out manager showing up in the hallway afterward, face tight, saying, "Oliver, do you know what you are doing?" Oliver said, "I am doing it on the record." She snapped back, "You are going to get someone hurt," then walked away fast like she had said too much. Mini climax 3 hit during the escrow transfer session that afternoon. Serena called from New York and said, "Someone attempted to broadcast a transaction from a related address 5 minutes ago. It failed because they did not have full control, but it means at least one key set is compromised." Oliver looked at the sealed pouch on the table and felt a wave of relief and nausea at the same time. After the transfer, the numbers were no longer the point. The point was that the tokens were safe and visible, sitting in an escrow wallet with a paper trail that could survive scrutiny. A week later, a real claimant appeared. Not a mystery email, but an executor from Miami with probate documents. A deceased developer had been part of the original project and had hidden the keys during a messy breakup with partners. The executor did not demand a payout. She asked for transparency and a fair process. Oliver expected anger. What he got was a tired honesty that made everything heavier. Counsel proposed a split based on documented contribution, taxes, and court approval, with a portion earmarked for public interest research as the deceased had written in his notes. The executor agreed in principle, then said one last thing that landed like a stone. "There is another envelope, and I think you have not found it yet." They did find it, but not in the book. It was in the library records. Oliver had scanned the donation intake form weeks earlier and missed a small handwritten line at the bottom. Box 3 includes personal papers from home office. That box had been sent to off-site storage and never opened because it was outside the digitization scope. When they retrieved it under a stack of canceled checks and a cracked phone case, there was a folder with the same careful handwriting. It contained identity documents, a resignation letter, and a clear statement that the keys were to be used only if the project collapsed, with any remaining value directed to research and education. No mysticism, no secret society, just a person trying to leave instructions that might outlast chaos. The case wrapped the way real cases wrap, slowly, with signatures and tax forms and notices posted in boring places. Oliver helped write the public report with the forensics firm and the attorney, focusing on methods and governance instead of hype. The university funded a research trip that Oliver had been postponing for years, not a luxury vacation, a working trip to Mexico City and Bogota to review archival collections on early digital civic tech and community finance pilots across the Americas. He booked economy flights, carried a recorder, and met librarians who cared about provenance as much as he did. Some people around him acted weird after the news leaked. A few co-workers treated him like he had pulled off a stunt. One person stopped talking to him entirely. Oliver did not get a new car or a loud life. He got a thicker file cabinet, a sharper sense of risk, and a rule he repeated to interns without smiling. When something valuable shows up by accident, the hard part is not finding it. The hard part is keeping your hands clean while everyone else tells you to be quick.